Huge losses for Evergrande's lenders. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee. We're going to have a look at an article from Yahoo Finance that's, discussing the huge losses that lenders to Evergrande face. This is an ongoing saga, and many people are, they're concerned that this is the Lehman Brothers of China, and the flow-on effect to other parts of the economy in China and the world, and countries that happen to be just a tiny bit dependent on China, like, maybe Australia and our iron ore industry. Well, we might see some fallout from this. Let's have a look at this article, everyone. One of China Evergrande Group's main lenders has made provisions for losses on a portion of its loans to the embattled property developer, while some creditors are planning to give it more time to repay, four bank executives have told Reuters. Now, here's the thing. It's a big company, a big developer. It could be toppling over and there could be fall-on effects everywhere. There may be some intervention from the government, the state in China. I mean, they're the first person that has to get paid. But we also have to realize, how many of these banks are going to be able to weather this loss? How much damage is it actually going to cause? Because they'll, always in the media, you love to play it up. The Chinese bank's measures, reported for the first time, show how financial institutions in the world's second largest economy are bracing for a possible collapse of Evergrande. The developer epitomized China's freewheeling era of borrowing and building, with nearly $305 billion in liabilities across loans, bonds, so-called trust products, and money owed to contractors and suppliers, among others. This is the one I'm worried more about. The contractors and suppliers. Agricultural Bank of China, Agbank, the country's number 3 lender by assets, has made some loan loss provisions for part of its exposure to Evergrande, one of the executives said without giving details. Meanwhile, China's Minsheng Banking Corp and China Citibank Corp Limited, two other major Evergrande lenders, are prepared to roll over some of their near-term debt obligations, two separate sources with knowledge of each situation said. Agbank, Minsheng, Citi, and Evergrande did not immediately respond to emailed requests for comment. In general, China's banks' exposure to Evergrande has fallen in the past year, and most of their outstanding loans are collateralized or guaranteed by deposits according to the four sources. All the sources decline to be named, as they are not allowed to discuss individual clients. Minsheng, for example, has cut its loan exposure to Evergrande to 30 billion yuan from 40 billion yuan over the past 12 months. So they were preparing for this. Maybe they could see the writing on the walls. And it's not just one wall, it's several walls because it's development. One of the sources added it stopped offering new loans to Evergrande in recent months. Last year, Evergrande reported total bank and other borrowings of 693.4 billion yuan, including loans granted by trust firms rather than banks, which analysts said accounted for the bigger portion, down from 782 billion in 2019. Despite the retrenchment and Evergrande collapse, even a managed one would still reverberate through the Chinese economy, given liabilities to equal 2% of the country's GDP. Just think about that, 2% of GDP. The company's bank exposure is wide, and leaked 2020 documents, written off as a fabrication by Evergrande but taken seriously by analysts, showed liabilities extending to more than 128 banks and over 121 non-bank institutions. After the leaked documents, the People's Bank of China, the central bank, requested all main Evergrande lenders to review their loan exposure and assess relevant financial risks on a monthly basis, a source at a state-owned bank said. Evergrande is due to pay $83.5 million of interest on September 23 for its offshore March 2020 bond. It has another US $47.5 million interest payment due on the 29th of September for March 2024 notes. The bonds would default if Evergrande fails to pay interest within 30 days. I mean, we're not talking much there, are we, to be quite honest? Regulators have not given any indication to Chinese lenders of a possible bailout of Evergrande, said a source at one of the main trust creditors. The editor-in-chief of the Chinese Communist Party-backed tabloid The Global Times on Friday warned Evergrande that it should not bet on a government bailout program on the assumption it is too big to fail. Well, maybe we're going to see some actual market implications in China, of all places. So what do you think, everyone? What do you think? What's the takeaway or the concern here? Well, it's interesting to see. I mean, the interest payments on those foreign bonds, if they default on that, we'll know in a few days now. We'll have to see. Keep an eye out to see what happens. And, I mean, if the banks have minimized their exposure, sure, it's going to have a hit. Will they survive? Will the CCP step in? Will the state step in and help them? We don't know. We'll have to wait. So keep an eye on this in the next 3 days to see how those interest payments goes on those foreign bonds and if they actually default on it. One thing to consider here in Australia, everyone, and you know what? Let's jump and have a look at this. I'm going to bring it up. The OECD Australian exports, just to show our relationship to China, everyone. And we'll just jump here. Now, you can see our economic complexity is, I'm going to log in so we get the slightly more up-to-date data. But our economic complexity isn't particularly high, everyone. We're at 79th in the world. Harvard, well, what do Harvard say we're at? Harvard. They've got us a little bit worse, everyone. They've got us at 86th in the world. But the issue is when it comes to our exports, 39.1% going to China, and our imports, 25.2% come from China. So any impact on their economy is going to be felt by Australia. And we're also seeing it in in iron ore and the prices for resources here too. One thing I want to remind everyone of, if you haven't seen this chart, guys, this is an interesting one. The amount of West Australian government revenue that's dependent on iron ore. There you go. So, guys, maybe one thing from at least Australia's perspective is to consider that perhaps we shouldn't be entirely dependent or dependent to such an extent on another country for our exports and imports. Maybe that's just a hard lesson we have to learn. And if you throw shipping costs on top of that, the cost of imports, fun times. As always, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and enjoy the content I create here, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. Sign up for SelfWealth or Stake. Use our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.